In the heart of West Africa, in a village called Ndomo, nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, lived a respected man named Chief Oko. The villagers revered him for his wisdom, leadership, and the wealth that he had accumulated through the years. His compound, the largest in Ndomo, was a symbol of his stature, adorned with carvings of ancestors and vibrant tapestries. Chief Oko wasn't just wealthy in cattle and land but also an influence. He was the custodian of the family's most precious possession, a golden bracelet that had been passed down for generations. It was no ordinary bracelet. It was said to bring untold prosperity to whoever possessed it, but with a deadly curse. Only the rightful heir could wear it without tragedy. Misfortune, the villagers whispered, had befallen many who tried to claim it unrightfully. Oko's eldest son, Ikeni, had long been preparing to inherit the bracelet, the key to his future power. However, whispers swirled in the village about another heir, a secret son that no one dared to speak about openly. The rumor lingered like a storm cloud over Oko's family, casting doubt on Ikeni's future as chief. As the old chief grew weaker with age, tension within the family grew stronger. It was a particularly hot afternoon when a stranger arrived in Ndomo. His skin glistened with sweat, and the weight of travel was evident in his tired yet determined stride. The stranger's name was Chidi, a young man of about 30 years. Though he was unknown to the villagers, his face carried a peculiar familiarity, one that many found unsettling. People turned their heads as he walked by, whispering among themselves about the striking resemblance between the stranger and Chief Oko's younger self. Chidi came with a single purpose: to claim what he believed was rightfully his. His mother, Ifeoma, had raised him far from the village, in a town by the river where she worked as a weaver. Before she passed, she had revealed the truth about his heritage, that his father was none other than the great chief of Ndomo. Armed with her words and an old photograph, Chidi journeyed to confront Oko and claim his place in the family. As Chidi made his way to Oko's compound, word spread like wildfire. Villagers, old and young, gathered at street corners and market stalls, discussing the sudden arrival. Could the stranger be the secret heir the village had whispered about for so long? Would Ikeni be forced to defend his inheritance? When Chidi finally reached Chief Oko's compound, he found the chief sitting beneath a large baobab tree. Oko's weathered face was lined with the wisdom of years, his eyes still sharp despite his age. Around him sat his advisors, and near the chief stood his two sons, Ikeni, the heir apparent, and his younger brother, Namdi, a gentle soul with little interest in leadership. Chidi's presence caused an immediate stir. Ikeni, tall and broad-shouldered, glared at him with suspicion. He had heard rumors of his father's past indiscretions, but he had never believed they would amount to anything real. Now, standing before him, was a man who could potentially strip him of his birthright. Chidi's heart pounded, but he squared his shoulders. "I am Chidi, son of Ifeoma," he said, his voice steady. "I have come to claim what is mine." The crowd gathered outside the compound gasped in unison. Oko's face darkened, and silence fell over the gathering. He had known of Ifeoma, though he had kept their relationship a secret even from his closest advisors. His eldest son Ikeni stepped forward, his voice filled with fury. "You think you can walk into our home and demand our inheritance?" Ikeni sneered, his hand gesturing toward the golden heirloom on his father's wrist. "This bracelet belongs to me. I am the rightful heir." Chief Oko, sensing the tension, raised his hand. His voice, though calm, carried the weight of authority. "Enough. We will not resolve this through arguments. The Council of Elders will decide what is to be done." The Council of Elders was the highest authority in Ndomo, composed of the oldest and wisest men in the village. Their duty was to oversee disputes, whether over land, cattle, or, as in this case, the lineage of the chief's family. They convened in the village square, sitting in a semicircle beneath the shade of tall palm trees. Around them, the entire village gathered, murmuring among themselves about the drama unfolding before their eyes. As the proceedings began, Chidi stepped forward to present his case. He held out the photograph of his mother with Chief Oko, a picture that silenced any doubts about his lineage. The resemblance was undeniable. The man in the photo was Oko, young and full of life. The elders studied the image carefully, exchanging glances as the weight of Chidi's claim became clear. Chief Oko stood, his voice solemn. I have made mistakes in my life, he said, acknowledging the truth. But the bracelet is not simply for my eldest son. It is for the one deemed worthy by the ancestors. Ikni's face flushed with anger. I am the eldest. I have lived here my whole life, under your guidance. This stranger, this outsider cannot take what is mine. The head elder, a man named Baba Uch, leaned forward. The law of the village is clear, he said in a voice as steady as a rock. The heirloom can only be worn by one who is worthy. Blood alone does not make a man worthy of leadership. In order to settle the dispute, the Council of Elders proposed a test of worth. The two brothers, Ikeni and Chidi, would be sent on a dangerous journey into the sacred forest to retrieve the osun herb, known for its rare healing properties. The herb grew deep within the forest, guarded by the spirits of the ancestors. Only the one who returned with the herb, unaided, would prove himself worthy to wear the golden bracelet. The villagers whispered nervously among themselves. The sacred forest was no place for the faint-hearted. Few who ventured into its depths returned unscathed. The spirits were said to watch over the forest, protecting it from intruders with supernatural forces. Chidi and Ikeni exchanged glances, both knowing that the stakes were high. Ikeni, despite his bravado, felt a pang of unease. Chidi, on the other hand, was determined. He had traveled far to claim his place in the family, and he wasn't about to let fear stand in his way. As the sun set, the two brothers were given provisions for the journey: a simple bag of food and water, a small knife for protection, and nothing more. At dawn, they would embark on their perilous journey, with the entire village watching their every move. The next morning, the village was alive with anticipation. The brothers, both dressed in simple traveling clothes, stood at the edge of the sacred forest. The towering trees loomed before them like silent sentinels, their branches swaying in the morning breeze. The forest was dense and foreboding. As they ventured deeper, the undergrowth grew thicker, and the air became heavy with the scent of damp earth and moss. They walked in silence, the only sound being the rustling of leaves underfoot. The tension between them was palpable. Ikni's mind raced with thoughts of how to outdo Chidi. He was determined to prove his worth, not just to his father but to the entire village. Chidi, on the other hand, remained focused on the task ahead. He knew this was more than a journey through the forest, it was a journey to find his place in the world. As the day wore on, the brothers made camp by a small stream. They sat in silence, neither willing to show weakness in front of the other. The sounds of the forest filled the night: the distant howl of hyenas, the chirping of crickets, and the occasional rustle of unseen creatures in the bushes. The next morning, the brothers continued their journey. They came to a narrow gorge, its steep walls covered in thick vines. The osun herb was said to grow on the other side, in the heart of the forest where the trees were tallest and the air was thick with the scent of ancient earth. As they made their way across, Ikni's jealousy festered. He could no longer tolerate the thought of sharing his inheritance with Chidi. As they approached the edge of the gorge, Ikeni turned to his half-brother, his face twisted with envy. "You don't belong here," Ikeni spat, his voice venomous. "You will never be one of us." Before Chidi could react, Ikeni shoved him hard. Chidi lost his footing and tumbled down the steep slope, crashing into the rocks below. His body hit the ground with a sickening thud. Ikeni, breathing heavily, looked down at his fallen brother. He felt a momentary pang of guilt, but it was quickly replaced by a sense of victory. He turned and disappeared into the forest, leaving Chidi behind. Chidi groaned in pain as he lay at the bottom of the gorge, bruised and blooded. His head throbbed, and his left ankle sent sharp jolts of pain through his body. As he sat up, his vision blurred for a moment before clearing, revealing the steep walls of the gorge. He knew he couldn't stay there. Ikeni had left him to die, but he couldn't let his half-brother claim the heirloom without a fight. Climbing out of the gorge seemed impossible, but Chidi was driven by a fierce determination. He had come too far to give up now. Slowly, he pulled himself to his feet, wincing at the pain in his ankle. Using the vines and roots that clung to the walls, he began the slow and arduous climb, each movement a struggle against the pain. As the hours passed, Chidi's body screamed for rest, but his will pushed him forward. The stories his mother had told him as a child about the spirits of the ancestors echoed in his mind. He whispered to them, asking for strength, for guidance, for the courage to continue. Though no voices answered, he felt an eerie presence in the air, a watchfulness that seemed to envelop him. When he finally reached the top of the gorge, the sun was already setting, casting long shadows across the forest. Exhausted but determined, Chidi limped deeper into the sacred forest. The path ahead seemed endless, but as night fell, something extraordinary happened. A faint, ethereal light began to glow among the trees, lighting a path before him. The spirits, it seemed, had not abandoned him after all. Following the soft glow, Chidi ventured further into the heart of the forest. The trees grew taller and denser, their branches forming a canopy overhead that blocked out the stars. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and ancient wood. Despite his exhaustion, Chidi pressed on, driven by the knowledge that his future depended on what lay ahead. After what felt like hours, Chidi found a small cluster of *gos and *herbs growing at the base of a towering tree. The plant's vibrant green leaves shimmered in the moonlight, their delicate petals glowing faintly. Chidi knelt down and carefully picked the herb, feeling a sense of relief wash over him. He had done it, he had found the sacred herb. But as he stood up, clutching the precious plant in his hand, he realized that Ikeni was nowhere to be seen. Had his brother already returned to the village? Or had he given up, consumed by his own greed and jealousy? Either way, Chidi knew he had to hurry back to Indomo before it was too late. The journey back to the village was grueling. Chidi's injuries slowed him down, and the pain in his ankle grew worse with each step. He had no food left, only a small flask of water, and the wild fruits he found were scarce. But Chidi refused to give up. With the *gos and *herb in hand, he knew he held the key to proving his worth. For days, Chidi trudged through the dense forest, his body weak but his spirit unbroken. The ancestors' glow still faintly guided his way, though it seemed to flicker as if testing his resolve. Every step was a battle, but the thought of returning to Indomo, of claiming his place in the family, kept him going. When Chidi finally emerged from the forest, the village of Indomo lay before him, bathed in the golden light of the setting sun. His heart raced with a mix of fear and hope. What awaited him there? Would the village accept him, or would Ikeni have already turned them against him? As Chidi limped into the village square, a wave of silence fell over the crowd that had gathered there. The villagers turned to stare at him, their eyes wide with shock. Chidi's clothes were torn and blooded, his body bruised and battered, but in his hand, he held the sacred osun herb. The elders, who had been in the middle of deliberations with Ikeni, rose from their seats in astonishment. Ikeni, who had returned the day before empty-handed, had told the council that Chidi had abandoned the journey and fled into the forest. But now, with Chidi standing before them, the truth was laid bare. Chief Oko stepped forward, his face a mask of both relief and sorrow. He had been torn between his sons, uncertain of who would prove themselves worthy. Now, with Chidi's arrival, the answer was clear. "You have returned," Babalach, the head elder, said, his voice filled with admiration. "And with the sacred herb, you have shown courage and perseverance. You have proven yourself worthy." Ikeni stood in stunned silence, his face contorted with a mixture of anger and disbelief. He had thought he could get rid of Chidi and claim the heirloom for himself, but now his treachery had been exposed. The council gathered once more, this time with the entire village watching. Chief Oko, his heart heavy with the weight of the decision, looked at his two sons. Ikeni stood on one side, his face hardened with anger and bitterness. Chidi stood on the other, weary but resolute, the sacred herb clutched in his hand. The head elder addressed the crowd. "The law of the ancestors is clear. The one who proves himself worthy, not through birthright but through his actions, shall inherit the family heirloom." Baba Yuseichi motioned for Chidi to step forward. The elder took the herb from Chidi's hand, inspecting it closely before nodding in approval. "This is the osun herb, no doubt. Chidi, son of Ifeoma, you have completed the test. You are the rightful heir." Ikeni let out a low growl, his fists clenched at his sides. "This isn't over," he shouted, storming out of the square. The villagers murmured among themselves as he disappeared from sight, but no one followed. Ikeni's betrayal had been laid bare for all to see. Chief Oko removed the golden bracelet from his wrist and approached Chidi. With a heavy heart, he placed the heirloom on his son's arm. The weight of the bracelet, both physical and symbolic, settled onto Chidi's shoulders. The villagers, once divided, now looked upon him with admiration and respect. Chidi stood before the villagers, the golden bracelet gleaming in the sunlight. But despite the victory, he didn't feel triumphant. The weight of the heirloom was heavy, not just in gold but in responsibility. He had claimed his place as the rightful heir, but it came with a burden, one that he had not fully anticipated. Turning to his father, Chidi spoke softly. "I never wanted to take this from Ikeni. I only wanted to be acknowledged as your son." Chief Oko's eyes were filled with sorrow. "I have wronged you, Chidi. I should have claimed you from the start, but my pride and fear held me back. I hope you can forgive me." Chidi nodded, though he knew forgiveness would take time. The villagers approached him one by one, offering their congratulations and their acceptance. Though he had entered the village as an outsider, Chidi had proven himself worthy of their respect and trust. But as the celebrations began, Chidi couldn't help but feel a lingering sense of unease. Ikeni had disappeared into the forest, his heart filled with anger and bitterness. Though Chidi had won the bracelet, he knew that his brother's jealousy could one day lead to greater conflict. For now, though Chidi was content, he had claimed the heirloom, proven his worth, and earned his place in the family. The future, however uncertain, was now his to shape. Thank you for watching. Please like, share and subscribe.